Welcome back to episode 8 of Motivational IQ, the podcast that breaks your brain open, looks inside, and figures out what makes you excited and what switches things back and forth. Today we're talking about contrast. I'm going to give you 2 easy exercises to help you figure out what actually moves you back and forth between hating things and loving doing them. I'm Andy Thompson. I'm a business coach and entrepreneur. Love helping small businesses, business owners, career movers, people who are ready to learn and want to make changes in their life, who are ready to put the effort in, and people who do hard work, meaning they're productive, that are willing to learn, they're humble enough and teachable, and seek excellence. If that's you, let's talk. I'd love to help and learn from you. Again, this is Motivational IQ, where we're going to give you insights to what makes you tick, what resonates and doesn't work with people. And today we're going to talk about switching and the contrast between what we love and what we hate. Let's start with a quote by Richard Branson. You don't learn to walk by following rules. You learn by doing and by falling over. So let me give you a story, and I'm going to change the name of the individual in this story just in case this person listens. We're going to call this person Linux. Last name of Linux. I don't know anybody Linux, Lennox. So I just used that name. We went as a group when we were working in corporate America about maybe 15 years ago to a sushi place for lunch. And this individual, Linux, we were eating and he said, "What's the green jelly-like substance?" And we all turned to him and looked and said, "What do you mean? I don't see any on your plate." He said, "Oh, it's this little ball of green stuff." And we said, "Oh, that's wasabi. It's really pretty spicy." And he said, "Yeah, I tried it." And we said, "Oh, just eat a little bit at a time." And he said, "I ate the whole ball all at once." And we joked from then on, don't Linux yourself whenever you are doing something new because you might step in a little bit over your head. I guarantee you that Mr. Linux never made that mistake again with wasabi. He was regretful of what he had done without asking questions. What does this mean to motivational IQ? Well, we're going to talk about the doing and when the doing impacts how we feel and how the feeling impacts what we do. And we're going to talk about when the things we love become things that we hate and when the things we hate can become things that we love. Let's start out with an example. How much money would you need to be paid in order to stand in dirty, muddy, bacteria-laden water with debris and trash up to your knees? It's cold, it's rainy, you're tired, you're hungry, and you're doing heavy physical labor. Most people would say, I either do that for work or no way. But the reality is, if the river's overflowing and your friend's home is in danger or you're in the community and helping, you're out doing exactly that and with vigor. In fact, probably more vigor than you normally do in your work. Just think about that for a second. What is it that makes that energizing, motivating, and I'm suddenly willing to do it? Another contrast is we sometimes loathe the work that we do and then go home and do something that we love. A hobby, a cause. We take care of pets. We don't get any rewards from pets. We take care of our yard. The only reward we get from that is either satisfaction from the job done well or maybe a little pride from the neighbors. But we do things that reward us zero, but we love them. And we give up time and money and blood, sweat, and tears for things that don't reward us extrinsically. And yet we loathe the job that pays for us to be able to do those things. By the same token, there are things that we hate to do that suddenly become things we can enjoy. How would that happen? So 2 exercises. Number 1, think of something you love to do. Just really enjoy it. You get into the zone, the flow state, you're engaged, you're contributing, you understand the why, the how, and the what, and you're working at whatever level works for you. That's usually a time when if somebody gave you more of that thing, you're happy to do it. In contrast, if it's something you hate to do and they give you more to do of it, you usually snap at them or get depressed or it's worse, right? Okay, so back to the thing you love to do. What could happen to that in order to make it something that you hate doing all of a sudden? The answer is very easy. Remove purpose, remove progress, and remove choice. So think of the action, think of the activity, and suddenly the reason you do it is gone. Or your ability to see progress dissipates. Or You have no choice in the matter. Suddenly, we no longer want to do those things. Ironically, the same habit, the same process happens for the things we hate doing. If you inject it with enough purpose, choice, and traction, progress activities, it will feel meaningful. Let's give another example. If you're living your life, you're counting your coins to save money for some purpose, all of a sudden you hear that a close loved one is in a bad car accident. All the things that you cared about in one moment are suddenly gone. Money, time away from work, taking time to rest and eat. All of a sudden, you're spending whatever time, money, resources, going without food, going without sleep to get to this loved one. It reorients your priorities. And it doesn't take disaster to do that. Improvement, this is my quote, improvement does not require failure. I've heard some motivational speakers say that when the cost of staying the same is greater than the cost of change, that's when you're motivated. And while that's true, there is a higher law, and that is when the opportunity in you and your desire to get there is greater than the opportunity you have now, that will motivate you. In other words, it doesn't have to be fear, punishment, pain. It can be optimism, goal, identifying the gap, the next level, and purpose. Let me tell another story. Back around the time of 9/11, I was in a tough job. I had left corporate America for a small business, and it was struggling. 9/11 almost put it under, and I ended up moving on. But I had one young child. He was about to turn 3, and my wife had just given birth to our second child, and that child was colicky. Very, very tough. And my heart goes out for anybody that has a colicky child. But, we got through it. We made it. It helped me. I learned a lot. But I remember very specifically coming home from a difficult job where we were struggling. And, anytime struggle comes into a small business, it can make people kind of nitpick each other. So the job situation was tough. The economy was tough. And I would come home to a crying baby. And every time I would come home, my wife would say, "How was work? Tell me about your day." And I realized all of a sudden that the last thing I wanted to do was talk about my difficult day and relive it. However, I listened to talks or, back in the day before podcasts, it was a talk radio and things like that. I was listening to a talk about prioritizing what matters most. And I realized that I was prioritizing my own comfort over the desires of my wife and her struggles. So I shifted gears and in my head, I said, my relationship with my wife and her comfort is way more important than 5 or even 10 or 30 minutes of me talking about my day. So I started coming home, shifting gears mentally as soon as I get home and saying, this is something I want to give and want to do. And suddenly the thing that I hated to do became way more meaningful. And I started taking the time, and our relationship got better. Our handling of the colicky child got better. And frankly, my handling of the job and the career got better. Purpose brings power. I want you to think about this. At what point does an experience or a situation take away your joy? And how can you re-inject joy into that? Look deep. But I'm going to tell you the 3 secrets is look for the purpose, readjust for a purpose that you care about or that's important to your cares. So for example, and I'm going to come back to this in a second, but a lot of people say they just want more money. I've never met anybody who really just wanted money. They wanted money as a tool to get something else that they really wanted. They wanted to save up money to get a better degree, or they wanted to pay for a new house or a new car or new D&D mat or something like that. But money was a tool to get something. It wasn't like they'd work for money, but really it was for something else and they got it through money. So make sure that your why is real, intrinsic, and meaningful, or a representation to get to something that's meaningful. This is why goals that are not just about results, but contain results, but go toward a bigger goal are more powerful, long lasting, and motivating. Okay, so 1, look for the why. The second one is look for ways that you can make choices about what you're doing. There's a great example of a study that was done with college students where they said, we're going to give you some simple math problems. And for every math problem you get, you're going to get a reward. 5 M&Ms or candy bars. And when you if you do another one after that, you get another reward identical to the first. And when you do another one after that, you get a reward identical to the second. What's interesting is that the fatigue of the reward diminishing result, the diminishing return for doing the math problems was pretty low. What's interesting is when they changed so that they had two questions of similar difficulty and they could choose between them, or two treats for doing a question and they could choose between the rewards, their output or the lasting value of the reward was much longer than when they didn't have choice. In other words, choice brings power. Choice brings engagement. And then the last thing is if you've kind of got good purpose and you've got good choices, make sure that you're able to measure and track progress towards those things. They all have to be in alignment. If you want to lose weight and you got great purpose, I want to do this, I want to be healthy, I want to be there for my grandchildren, whatever. And I'm going to, there's 3 or 4 things I'm going to do and I'm going to choose between them each day, but you're not tracking, if you're not weighing yourself and seeing progress after a period of time, you're going to burn out. It's necessary. So going back to the critical area, the critical question, is the experience taking away my joy? For example, does being overweight take away the experience, the joy of food? Does selfishness take away the joy of a relationship? In other words, does the experience you're going through switch and contrast so that it's not working? This can be changed by motivational structures, autonomy, mastery, and purpose. Let me give one more example from my career. Early on in my career as a project manager, I remember one of the leaders of the IT organization standing up and giving kind of this rah, rah, rah speech. And at the end, this person said, "And don't let the barn burn." And we're all like, "What? What does that mean?" Later, I found out that when a barn is on fire, IT people would tend to estimate how many buckets of water and how long it would take, and then refine the estimate before they actually started putting out the water. What this person was saying is, sometimes you just got to get right to what matters. Now, how does this apply to what we're talking about? There are situations that drive a contextual purpose very, very quickly. If you see someone whose life is in danger, or maybe something else not as serious but close, it quickly drives motivation. Adrenaline will kick in. Adrenaline kicks in when purpose activates to the extreme. And then our brains immediately fill in the blanks with how and what. Don't let the barn burn. Make sure you know when to act and not when you're going to measure and methodically resolve a situation that's urgent. All right, let me wrap up with one more quote. Not everything that counts can be counted, and not everything that can be counted counts. This is attributed to William Bruce Cameron amongst a whole bunch of other people. And what it really means is be careful that the things that you're tracking, counting, measuring progress against aren't the reality of what the purpose is tied to. A quick example there. If you're trying to change one behavior, make sure you're not altering something that triggers a different result than your actual behavior. In corporate America, that's hoping for A and rewarding for B. In other words, if people are working for rewards, they're going to work more for the rewards, not for the results of the work. So make sure you align that carefully. A really good example is um, adding flyers to a bike rack so that you can take a flyer for some service or something. About 33% of the flyers get thrown on the ground. Okay. But if you add the same flyer, same number, to the same bike rack with graffiti on the wall behind it, the litter is doubled. Our environment changes what we do, and sometimes we count the wrong thing for the wrong result. Another great story. In World War II, there was a situation where they had all these bombers coming back, and they wanted to reinforce the planes in the right places to save everything, right? So they started tracking where all the bullet holes were on the planes that came back, and they started armoring the planes in all those locations. And then somebody said, "We're doing it wrong. We're only measuring bullet holes in planes that return," when the reality is it's where there aren't bullet holes, because that's an indicator of where the plane didn't survive. Again, measuring the wrong thing can break the back of what we really like. Okay, so boil it down. Consider keeping a journal throughout your workday. Set a timer, one every hour, one every 2 hours, whatever, and jot down, what am I doing that I really enjoy and what am I doing that I really hate? And maybe extra credit, write down, if this weren't the case, I would not enjoy this behavior that I'm liking. Or if this changed, I would enjoy this task that I'm hating. Get into the habit of figuring out what really matters. Then you'll understand where you are in the process and which of why, how, or what you need more in order to move you along the spectrum. Find your home where you resonate the best and operate the best, and then you can navigate up and down as life deals you situations. Remember, we are all in different places along the motivational spectrum throughout the day for various factors. You might be in one in your relationship, one in your health, one in your mental state, one in your work capability, one in one assignment, one in another. Understanding where you are and keeping yourself engaged, or at least knowing the tools to help you stay engaged, is the critical goal. Okay, it's awesome. I love it. I'm excited about it. Remember, motivational IQ is all about helping you understand the environment that helps you stay engaged. I call that motivational buoyancy, and the understanding that motivational intelligence. If you like this content, share it. Come onto the website, motivationaliqpodcast.com, and comment. I've got another website, the Work Joy Project. That's where I'm trying to figure out or change the way that people engage and love their work. Share, comment, but always think about what matters most to you and how to manifest that so that you can stay engaged.